Welcome on Conventa 2014. How do you feel in Ljubljana? How do you feel on Conventa?
Well, I'm very happy to be back because I've been connected to all of the Conventas and even the event that predated Conventa, and I've been to Ljubljana 30 times and it's one of my favourite cities of the world. But I'm here working. I'm very happy with Conventa, the way it looks. I'm very happy with the new countries that are exhibiting, which is good to see. But much more importantly, I'm very happy with the number of international hosted buyers in town, which is a record, which is, after all, why we're all here. We're here to try and bring more business to the region.
Do you see any progress if you're talking about meetings industry in the region of Southeast Europe?
Oh, lots of progress. You have to divide it between the suppliers and the people that buy the services from the suppliers. The suppliers have become much more aware of how to do business internationally, and we're beginning to see more awareness and more demand for the region from the many international buyers who, even 5 years ago, didn't know where Ljubljana was, didn't know where Podgorica was, and wouldn't be able to spell either word, and probably still can't spell Ljubljana because very few people can. But humour aside, the recognition of the region is increasing, and I think Conventa is a long-term strategy to build the business for the region, not just for Slovenia. And it does take time, but we're beginning to see the shoots of the labour, the beginning to see demand beginning to increase. And that we have 200 hosted buyers here. We wouldn't get that if people weren't interested in the region.
Do you think that institutional or ministry at economic development is enough aware of importance of meetings industry in the region of Southeast Europe?
No, in none of the countries.
How come?
I think traditionally in most countries the business tourism or meetings or conference or events industry sits within the tourism portfolio. But the reality is the meetings industry, which is the correct name for all of those things, it's the official name, is not tourism. It does involve visitors, but the reason they're here is to do business or to learn or to pass on knowledge. And they use a destination differently. They use a hotel differently. They use a meeting room. And if it's on the coast, they don't go and sit on the beach all day. They're in the meeting room in a hotel, exchanging knowledge and information. They may spend more money in the bar, which is a good thing, and they may spend more money in the restaurants, which is a good thing. And the reality is, most governments don't understand the economic importance of the world of meetings and events. In the UK, £56 billion worth of economic impact, 423,000 full-time jobs in the industry, and £22 billion of taxation revenue.
Enormous numbers.
But 3% of GDP. And I would suspect, and there's been studies all around the world, I think it would surprise the governments in this region how important the world of meetings and events are for their economy, for the exchange of information and knowledge at scientific and educational level. And so there's a big job of work to do to get the governments to realise they need, frankly, to invest more alongside the private sector activity.
Do you need a lot of passion and energy if you want to work on the field of meetings industry?
Well, I think you need a lot of passion and energy and enthusiasm to be good at anything. If you're a farmer, you have to love the land. When you're in the meetings industry, it helps if you, particularly internationally, if you like to travel and like to meet people from different parts of the world, which is one of the great pleasures of what we do. But it's long hours, but it's interesting, you learn a lot, it's multi-skilled, you need to be skilled in a number of areas, you need to be a good communicator, good at logistics, good with finance. If you're not, the events don't work. But also internationally, you have to be culturally aware. We're very lucky in Europe, although it's one continent, it's so diverse from country to country, and that's our richness as Europeans.
What qualities make a great event or meeting planner?
Well, I think as a planner, you have to be good at logistics. You have to be willing to manage a group, a big supply chain. because a meeting and an event is really a story about lots of different suppliers and not just about the delegates. You have to be very good at that. You have to be a very clear communicator. And I don't necessarily mean speaking different languages. Well, as you know, most British people only speak English anyway, so we're not very good at languages. But you have to be able to communicate ideas and detail very clearly. But I think, in a way, what Conventa is about is what makes a great destination, more than what makes a great event. And a successful destination has to be accessible, and the region does have challenges. Slovenia does have challenges. It has to be priced competitively. It has to have good facilities. It has to have good service. It has to be a safe place to be. And there's a sixth reason in which this region has a great opportunity. It has to be new or different or novel. And this region is an emerging region and new to many meeting planners. So that's the big opportunity for Croatia, for Montenegro, for Slovenia, for Serbia and other countries of the region. And Conventa is about spreading that information to bring more business in.
What do you think is the number one way to earn clients in our industry?
Well, you have to be honest and transparent. You have to communicate what you offer, not what you think you offer. Words like unique are used far too much. Stop using the word unique unless you explain what you mean by unique. Don't claim you're the best, because no one knows where the best hotel or venue is in the world. We simply don't know. And you have to make sure your facilities are right for the type of event. You can have the most marvellous facilities, but if they're not right for that event, they're not the most marvellous facilities. And so you have to be flexible, you have to be efficient, you have to be fast in dealing with inquiries. And this is on top of having a beautiful country and great gastronomy and wonderful wines, but they don't influence the decision making about bringing an event here. It's about the quality of service and facilities and price and accessibility.
What have been some of your most challenging assignments?
What, personally? Well, I've worked all around the world. I've run events on every continent. And working in the Arab world is quite challenging because culturally it's very different. I think one of the most challenging things I experienced is when I first came to Slovenia some years ago, and getting the suppliers to work as one group rather than as competitors, because a destination can only be successful if the local suppliers know when to collaborate and when to compete. Now, to get the business, you have to collaborate. Once you've got the business, then compete. And what happens in emerging markets, like where we are in Southeast Europe, is that sometimes there is too much local competition and not enough collaboration. So that's challenging in all emerging markets. I work in Lithuania. It's the same there. I've worked in Saudi Arabia. It's the same there. I've worked in Sicily, a very ancient land. It's the same there.
How do you see Slovenia through eyes of ordinary tourists?
Wonderful place, great variety, Mediterranean climate, alpine climate, temperate climate, choice. You've got the mountains, you've got the sea.
What about culinary?
Big surprise. I think Southeastern Europe and Central Europe have a reputation of heavy food, rather like Britain actually. But actually the choice is fantastic. The freshness of the food is truly wonderful. And I know Slovenian wine much more than I know Croatian wine, but I've discovered truly wonderful Slovenian wine.
If you're talking about cuisine, we are undespoiled destination.
Undiscovered. There is an assumption in many people that in emerging markets, on what was once called Eastern Europe, which involves many nations now, the assumption is there lacks sophistication, lacks choice, lacks opportunity. And of course, all those assumptions are incorrect. When you come here, you realise, as a British person, the first thing you realise, everybody speaks English virtually. And in our world, everybody speaks English. In the meetings and events world, very important. Not just as an Englishman, but because the language of meetings and events is English. And then you realise, actually, the welcome is rather special. Then you realise it's an incredibly safe place to be.
Yes. They have drinking water.
And you know, you can drink the tap water. And I grew up, whenever you went abroad, you never drank the tap water, but I drink the tap water, and I have since day one coming into this country. And I do in Croatia, of course.
Thank you for this interview, and welcome to Slovenia next year.
Thank you very much.